Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do part 3, the final part associated with chapter 8 from the book UFO Sightings by Alan Baker. This one once again having to do with the theme linked to alien underground. In other words, alien underground bases that are supposedly mixed with either aliens, humans, or both. You've already seen some of the other parts highlight some of the fascinating theories associated with various UFO bases around the world. This one has to do with a final segment linked to Canada. Who knew that there were actually UFO bases in Canada as well? I love this chapter because there was definitely a vibe associated with Half-Life, with Black Mesa. You had that beautiful game that showcased the underground base, how big it was, and you got to explore all of it. And of course, have a mixture of some of the aliens there from Dimension Z, or was it Dimension X? I can't remember. Zen, I think it was called. So this is definitely the vibe that I got here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's start the final segment, which is called UFO Bases in Canada. It's a rather short one, and then I'll give my final thoughts and opinions. And as always, let me know what your thoughts are too about this and the chapter overall. So here's what it says. According to Commander X, you'll find any number of UFO bases scattered throughout Canada, particularly underneath Toronto. In 1979, a man named Ernest accidentally discovered an entrance to an underground cavern system while looking for a lost kitten on Parliament Street in the downtown area of the city. Having squeezed through the entrance into a dark cave, he encountered a 3-foot-tall monkey-like creature with glowing orange-red eyes, which hissed at him, "Go away, go away." And so he promptly did so. Some researchers believe that Toronto lies on top of an eons-old city built by the L race and containing a huge array of instruments and machines, many of which are still in working order. The center of the city lies beneath the junction of Gerrard Street and Church Street, the magnetic machinery apparently accounting for the above-average traffic accident rate there. A few years ago, the city was occupied by the villainous Deros, the highly malignant, dwarf-like creatures described by Richard Shaver in his rather dubious chronicles of Lemuria, first published in Ray Palmer's Amazing Stories magazine in the 1940s. But before they were first started the city by inner positive Earth beings, the Deros were occasionally spotted on the streets of Toronto at night. Canadian researcher Ivan Boyce claims to have encountered one at 4 a.m. and describes it as having no face except for eyes and 2 holes in his blank face for a nose, no mouth at all. There is an old mine in Newfoundland province that allegedly contains the entrance to another subterranean city complex. While the mine was in operation, many strange noises like distant music were heard. At other times, mumbling voices would drift through the galleries among the miners. One night, a miner was checking on some equipment when he was jumped by several small men who pointed some form of instrument at him and rendered him unconscious. He was discovered the following morning and, although physically unharmed, he refused to set foot in the mine again and soon left his job. Long after this event, another miner who went underground alone disappeared. His lamp and helmet were discovered, but he was never seen again. Eventually, the remaining men became so unnerved by working in the mines that it was condemned and then closed down. Many years later, 3 amateur cavers, Arnold White, Rick Grayton, and Don Lawrence, became interested in the abandoned mine and its sinister history. Their first expedition had to be aborted when 2 policemen threatened to arrest them if they entered the mine. However, they returned in the early hours of the following morning, approaching from a different direction, and found their way in. Almost immediately, they heard a voice, apparently coming from far off in the mine, shout, "Come." This was followed by sounds of running, and although the 3 explorers searched the tunnel ahead with their flashlights, they could see no one. Making their way further into the mine, they gradually became aware of a blue light ahead, followed by the sound of a metal door closing. When they arrived at the place from which the light had seemed to radiate, they could find nothing. However, when they tapped the walls of the tunnel with their pick hammers, they were rewarded with metallic clangs. After marking the place by chipping off several pieces of rock, they returned to the surface. When they returned the following evening with more appropriate equipment, they discovered that the chipped rock of the tunnel wall had mysteriously been repaired. Undaunted, they used a battery-powered rock drill to reach the metal door that lay beyond. Using a different drill bit, they then penetrated the metal door, and then a blue light shone through the hole. At that point, they heard a sound of moving machinery, and the section of the wall on which they were working on slid up out of sight, revealing a 5-foot-high corridor extending into the blue-lit distance. Finally overcoming their quite considerable apprehension, the three men entered the corridor, which seemed to be constructed of a seamless plastic material. After some time, they came to a spiral staircase leading even further into the ground. They descended and found themselves in another corridor, this one pale green in color. Further explanation revealed a large chamber filled with all manner of electronic equipment. At the far end lay a platform on which rested a disc-shaped object that the men took to be a UFO. Suddenly, the pale light in the chamber changed to a deep red, and one of the many monitor screens lining the walls flickered to life. Although they could not quite make out the shadowy image on the screen, they heard a high-pitched voice addressing them from the screen. As it was speaking, Don Lawrence managed to write down its message to them. It said, "You have been expected. You have been observed since first you entered our domain. You gaze upon the upper regions of our world. You are the first of your kind to be permitted this privilege. Let it be known this truth. We harbor you no ill will. We depend not upon your superficial world for our sustenance or pleasure. Those of your kind who make themselves the interpreters of our intentions are not but the pecuniary receivers of your civilization. Let it again be said that we desire man no harm and wish only to pursue our independent existence on this, our mutual planet. We shall not influence nor bring to you discord in any medium. We are not doers of evil. Our world spans the inner gulf of your globe. We have existed since before your time. Had we wished harm upon you, we could also have been its receivers. We beg you a friendly farewell and hope our message will be heeded and find wide acceptance among those of your kind who find it necessary to concern themselves with our domain." As the screen faded, the three men suddenly felt lightheaded and then lost consciousness. When they came to, they found themselves outside the mine entrance, minus their caving equipment, but with their notebooks, wallets, and so on intact. Several weeks after their strange adventure, the men discovered that the radium on their wristwatch dials had been affected and no longer glowed in the dark. And then that's it. That pretty much ends everything associated with Chapter 8, Alien on the Ground, from the book UFO Sightings by Alan Baker. Let's go ahead and let's talk about that briefly. So one last segment, again, highlighting what is going on in Canada. So apparently those of you that live in Toronto or lived in Toronto, maybe even drove by or something, you just went across an eons old city that is apparently right underneath Toronto. In fact, I liked how it's very specific. You have to go to Parliament Street in the downtown area. Some of you might already know this area there by heart. And then you go to the junction of Gerrard Street and Church Street. If you go there and somehow go into the entrance of, I guess it was a manhole cover or something else, maybe something that goes into the sewer system, that's where you'll apparently find a long-lost city. You're going to find machinery there, and you're going to find apparently some kind of beings there as well. So how about that? Apparently you might even run into a 3-foot-tall monkey-like creature that has orange-red eyes. I find that fascinating. Toronto that has such a huge population, and who knows how much daily maintenance happening in that area, both above and below ground. And you have a city there, and nobody had been able to find it until this guy, Ernest, did so. So kind of dubious, but who knows? Again, this is just the stuff that I'm presenting here as well. And then apparently if you go to Newfoundland province, there's an old mine there. Not an exact location, but at least you know somewhat of an area. And then that's where apparently some other small men are there as well, living in that location and then trying to make their presence known as little as possible. There was that interesting thing involving those three people, those three amateur cavers who decided to take a look, and lo and behold, they found something. They were able to go in. Apparently, there was like a false cave entrance of sorts that really became a metal door, and then going inside, that's when they found a huge chamber, all kinds of electronic equipment, and then finally the UFO. And then lo and behold, that's where they had a sudden communication with one of the grays, whatever that was, a shadowy image as it was described, telling them that everything is good. They've been watching them. They've been there for a long time, since before civilization itself, and it's just about independent coexistence, as they stated. So interesting stuff. But otherwise, that's it. So let me know what you guys think about the chapter Alien Underground. Again, dealing with alien underground bases with aliens, humans, or a mixture of both. I've already seen some of your comments too, showcasing some interesting stuff. Some people believing some of those bases, and then others stating that no, it's been proven like it's false. That's the kind of stuff that I love seeing on the comments, is just different sides. All right, everyone. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.